Good morning and welcome to the first DYOJO podcast live of 2021. Let me plug my better microphone in here. Hopefully that makes the sound better. 2021, we're off to a good start. Those of you that are aware, 2020, we published Be Intentional Estimating. And that's just flying off the presses. And 2021, we published The Intentional Culture. So it's a great read. Actually, it just got approved for paperback. So my proofs have been ordered and should be in the mail shortly, but that's available Kindle and paperback. So this, for me, it's been I guess I want to say books I've read. The Service Master Story by Al Erzman. He's coming on in February to talk about this, but navigating the tension between people and profit. So that's a book I've read. I definitely recommend those of you that are trying to build your company based on vision and trying to filter that through and some of the growing pains of that. And then a book I'm currently reading, When Worlds Collide, Resolving Insurance Coverage and Claims Disputes by Bill Wilson, RTFP. I'll leave that up to you to interpret, but a really good read. This is, I believe it's primarily, we'll be asking Bill about that, primarily written to help agents interpret the policies that they're selling, which is a good thing for everyone to know. Like, whatever industry you're in, you should know what the heck you're selling, right? And how to do it properly. And so this is a really good read. It goes through property, casualty, and auto. So there's some really interesting things in there from that standpoint. And I think he has a good balance of like trying to be helpful, but also saying, do your dang job. Which is our motto, right? DYOJO, do your own job, dojo. So in a book I'm looking forward to reading, Benjamin Riccardi released the No BS Guide to Internet Marketing for Restoration Contractors. He puts out a lot of good content, ironclad restoration marketing. So he sent this over. I will be reading that soon and sharing my thoughts. But we do this. The only reason we do this podcast is for the money, copious amounts of money. And so, if you want to support us, this book is very, very expensive. I think this one's $18, and then this one right now is $14. And so, easy to read. So I am so excited to be bringing on Ken Larsen. So I'm going to do my best. Ken has been very active with IAQ Radio. I cannot encourage you enough, if you are in the restoration industry, claims adjacent industry, please do yourself a favor and listen to IAQ Radio. Cliff, the Z-Man Zlotnick, and Radio Joe Hughes do a great job of digging in with people that have brought the industry up. Obviously, Cliff Zlotnick is one of the godfathers of the restoration industry. And so Ken's been on, I know at least episode 134, talking about drying standards and practices, quackery, 436, talking about the state of the restoration industry education. And then a really good one is episode 426, where Ken and Cliff partnered up to write 2 articles about the elephant in the room and kind of addressing some of the issues with the IICRC S500 revisions and some of the approaches to drying in education. So Ken is big on education, doing it right. So we're going to try to, again, not rehash all of those, but introduce those who may not be aware of Ken and talk a little bit about what he sees improving the industry. So let's bring Ken in. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning. How are you?
So far, so good. So you're down in sunny Florida, correct?
I am. I'm in the Tampa area. And don't you love the whole new world where we got to work out of our tiny little rooms in our house? I mean, it doesn't seem very professional, but that's the way the world is right now.
Yeah. Well, I think you talked about, maybe you had addressed even prior to COVID on one of the episodes about, taking things remote, right? People don't have the expense of going to classes and sending people and staying in hotels and all the downtime. But there are some it's forced us to do some things that we've known for a while we should be doing, right?
Absolutely. And so, the IICRC has been hesitant to do remote learning opportunities, but
Yeah.
now the world has taken them there, whether they like it or not.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, well, let's see. What's I always like to ask, and I don't know, I know you've addressed this before, but what got you into the industry? Did young Ken go to high school thinking I want to be drying out buildings?
Man, I don't think so. Pretty lame childhood, if that's what I was dreaming about. No, so what happened was, a lot of people know a little bit about my history. I'm originally Canadian from Vancouver, British Columbia, and I had my own restoration firm there for 20 years. And so I got married pretty young, like at 21 years old.
Okay.
But my first years before that was with my father. He had a restoration company in Calgary, Alberta, and
Okay.
that's where I got my first exposure. Like so many in our industry, we're kids and we work with our dad as he goes to
Yep.
work, and that was kind of my world. And so I started from about the age of 17, and yeah, I'm still in it. It's funny how it just took me right to this point.
Well, and that's right. I do remember you addressing that. Like I said in the opening, you've got several episodes in with IAQ Radio. So it quickly became a passion of yours to address proper approaches to drying, and then education has been a big part of your career. What kind of sparked that interest, and why has that been kind of a lifelong passion for you?
Sure. So you've got to think back to the year 1978 when this
Yep.
industry was very, very young, and there was not a lot of well, we don't have the standards that we have today. We don't have the regular practices back then, and so I'll be honest. When I first got into this industry, I didn't really realize the importance of education, and so we did our jobs the way we best thought it was to be done. And so
Yeah.
we installed air movers and dehumidifiers, and we sprayed the mold. Back then, you saw mold, you sprayed it, and we would never do that today. But back in those innocent days, we just didn't understand what we were doing. So I had a colleague named Roy Piers in Vancouver who really encouraged me to go to at least one course to see what I don't know, because we don't know what we don't know, right? So I went
Yep.
to that first course, and man, what a bunch of light bulb moments, realizing the risks I was taking and how I was really not providing a valuable service to my clients. So I realized I got to start getting some more education. And that began the process of me gaining more and more education, which organically led to an invitation for me to learn how to be an IICRC instructor. So in 2003, I was invited to join Dri Eaz and be one of their instructors. And so that began the process of my education career.
Of formally doing that. And so you've got the book Leadership in Restorative Drying, which is now currently in its 4th edition. When did you first release that?
So that was boy. So the Leadership in Restorative Drying first edition was around 2011 or 2012, somewhere around there, and it had some as with any first attempt at writing a book, there's things that you wish you could do over. So I decided I was going to modify it, add some more content, and the second, third, and finally the 4th edition came out with more information and better organization and ways of expressing these complicated technical ideas. So anyways, we're at the 4th edition now. I plan on releasing a 5th one probably in about a year or so. I'm going to be adding content in there that includes information about being a consultant, an expert, or an inspector
Okay.
on these jobs. So those 3 trades, I'm going to be adding content for the readers to learn how to start entering that field.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can currently buy it one new from $249 and then four used starting at $488.21. So it's
Oh, isn't that the craziest thing? So here's what happened. And I hate to admit this, but just like life is, we always get surprises and kicks in the pants, right?
yeah.
So my original publisher went broke. And
Okay.
so they kept my original files and they stopped producing the book without any announcement or anything. They just
Oh, jeez.
closed their doors. So I'm going like, wow, what happened? And so I had to get a new publisher and upload the files and get it all set up. Now, what ended up happening is that this company that went broke kept all the proceeds from the book. So I
Oh,
didn't make a cent. They took it all. And
wow.
yeah, I know it's a pretty scary world out there. So now what I've done is I've got a new publisher. During the time that my book was not available from this publisher, there has been some people who acquired 3 or 4 of those books and decided to sell them for $1,000 a piece because you couldn't get them anywhere. You couldn't get them unless you knew me. Then I can get you a book. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's certain people out there that are just trying to triple and quadruple the money on the book and selling it for 1,000 a piece.
$1,000. Jeez.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, yeah, that's so you have some when do you plan to do you have a rough timeline for the fifth edition?
Yeah, it'll be about a year from now. I'm really not, in a mad panic to release it. I want it to be, it's important that I'm starting to talk about very sensitive subjects, like how do you be an expert and how do you consult? Boy,
Hmm.
that wording's got to be really careful.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so I'm spending the time to do it correctly.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. So,
Which, by the way, I want to make sure your listeners hear this. The actual retail price for the book is $249. It's not $1,000. It's not $500. It's the $249 price. And if any of your listeners, I'm going to be a nice guy here. Any of your DYOJO listeners would like to have a discount on that book, they may let you know, and I'll give you 40% off. How's that? 40% off the
40%
book.
off.
There you
Okay.
go. And get
Contact
me
the
that
DO.
information, and I'll get it ordered for them.
And so is the best way to get that, is that your drystandard.org website?
Yeah, no, the way to get the book would be through Amazon. So you
Okay.
search for Leadership in Restorative Drawing, and
Yep.
it'll come right up. Okay.
So as far as getting the 40% discount, we would have to contact you directly though, right?
Yeah, so trying to think of how we can do this. If your listeners contact you, John, you
Okay.
can forward the request to me, and then I'll make sure that they're fulfilled.
Boom. Okay. 40% off. Thank you, Ken. That's
There
awesome,
you
man.
go. By the way, yours
Um,
is in the mail. I'm sending you a comp copy as well.
oh, very cool. Thank you so much.
Well, after
Well,
all,
and
you
that,
did give me your book. See,
yeah,
I got it. There you
uh,
go.
equal value, correct?
Sure, absolutely. You bet. Actually, I think that you said this. This is the worst book I have ever read all
Yes.
the way through.
Yeah,
All the way through.
on this subject. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ken. I
Okay.
appreciate it. I put that in figuring that would be a way to tell whether someone actually read it. So
Right.
now this 249, again, this is more in line with training manuals and things that you would receive at an IICRC course. So that is not out of line. You didn't write a book per se in the sense of, hey, this is something fun to read. I mean, this is a prescriptive educational reference piece that can really help someone build something from the ground up, correct?
Right. Would you mind if I told you a little bit about what inspired me to write the book?
Please do, yeah.
Okay. So here's what happened. Back in the year 2000, all our industry had was training manuals from the IICRC instructors who
Yep.
crafted their manual to include the learning objectives that the IICRC requires every instructor to teach. The problem is that the IICRC 20 years ago had way more learning objectives than they do today that really do not comply with scientific principles. And it annoyed the heck out of me. It took me to the point where I wondered how much of what I have been taught should I actually believe. And so I started to research from sources outside of our industry. There are a lot of industries that dry things. You have the wood drying industry, grain and fruit drying, paper drying, textile drying, drying of fabrics and wool, You think about all these different industries that dry things. Well, they have done extensive studies on what it takes for drying materials and making water change phase from a liquid to a gas. So
Yeah.
what is involved with, or what does our tools actually do? And so we had all these ideas from instructors in the IICRC that they were saying, look, the reason why you install an air mover is to sweep away that boundary layer of humidity adjacent to the damp materials. So I started researching subjects like that and learned that that idea does not exist. It is pure fallacy. It's an IICRC-ism, and there isn't a source on the planet that says that happens, that that's what is at the surface of a material that you're drying. This layer of humidity, microscopic layer that's 100% relative humidity right at the surface of the material, that is a roadblock preventing water molecules from evaporating into that saturated atmosphere. It just doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
so, I started thinking, well, shoot, if that doesn't exist, what else doesn't exist? And that's what inspired the book. And if you read in the book, I've identified all of those weak learning objectives. I try to avoid saying wrong. It's just a little bit,
Yeah.
rough, but make no mistake, it's wrong. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
flat out wrong. And so I exposed them all. And so you can see what the learning objective is in the IICRC, and then there's a footnote saying that this is a compromise in accuracy, and then I explain what the real accuracy is in the book. And so I'm of the opinion that accurate information is empowering, and it
Mm.
also makes you competent if you exercise proper fundamental uh, um, strategies to make the water evaporate and change phase from a liquid to a gas. So, anyways, that's kind of what inspired me, and it just became a work of passion, and it just got larger and larger and larger, and I'm pretty much I got an empty brain now. I don't have anything else to share. That's everything I got.
Well, and not to rehash, I guess 100% of what you and Cliff talked about in 426, but of IEQ radio. Do I understand correctly? Part of that is, I think some people listening to you would say, the things that you talk about are very complex and maybe difficult to understand. But what I hear is, in some ways, you're trying to simplify what should be simplified and only be complex where it should be complex. Is that accurate? I mean, a lot of the principles, like you said, the fundamental principles aren't necessarily that complex. We just create unnecessary confusion.
Right. So that's one of the platforms that Cliff Zlotnick speaks to.
Yeah.
He's often said how we have made our industry far more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure that I share that same position with him. I think that it's important that a restorer understands complicated, sophisticated ideas because that's the industry we're in.
Yeah.
We can dumb down messages to the point where it cripples the student. So let me
Too
give you an
much.
example. Okay, here's an example. Um, some people teach or believe that warm air holds more water than cold air, but technically air doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't. It's just that water vapor can be one of the constituents in this blend of gases that we call air.
Yeah.
But that doesn't require, a water vapor molecule does not require the presence of oxygen or nitrogen in order to exist in a vapor state. So the air is not technically holding the water. The more accurate statement would be that water vapor is one of the constituents of this blend of gases we call air, but it doesn't technically get held by the air. So now the reason why that's important, okay, here's why. The student that believes that warm air holds water or more water than cold air will never be able to wrap their head around this idea of vacuum freeze drying. How does that work? Pardon me, I'm sorry.
No worries.
How does vacuum freeze drying work in the absence of air if warm air holds more water than cold air? How
Yeah.
does vacuum freeze drying work? You can't understand that if you believe that air holds water. So this is why I spend the time to explain it, because I'm trying to help the students who've invested the time and energy to get their IICRC credential to
Right.
expand their understanding and to evolve into a more complete understanding so that they can grasp these complicated and very sophisticated drying techniques like vacuum freeze dry.
Yeah. I don't recall, were you in on the initial composition of like the first S500 or any of the revisions?
Sure. So not number one. Number one was a different committee back in 1992, I think is when they created 1992 or 1994. It's a ways ago. Is it 1992 was standard one? I have to check the records.
I think 94 was when it was released, if I remember correctly, but.
Okay. All right. And so I wasn't involved in that committee. And in fact, as I think about this, I have not been involved in any of the original drafting committees.
Okay.
I was extremely involved in the review process. So I
Okay.
gave lots of feedback. I studied every word and every sentence,
Yeah.
and just tried to drive my head to just understand the full scope of their message. And then, if there was some changes that I thought needed to happen, I would give them the supportive documentation for the recommended change, provide them with new language, replacement language, and that way the document becomes improved.
Yeah.
I did this because sometimes these committees can be extremely difficult to cope with because there's so much debate that goes on and very strong personalities. I don't do well in a room where you got a whole bunch of strong personalities, ready to take each other out.
Yeah.
So it can get difficult. But my involvement with giving that feedback still had a positive effect in the final outcome of the standards.
Well, and that's something you speak to a lot too. Is trying to unify. I guess you say, or IICRC is kind of a consensus, right? It's not necessarily 100% this person's opinion or this person's opinion, but what can we try to agree on? I can only imagine that process has to be, tension filled to say the least.
Imagine this, John. Okay, so you have this committee, and one of the committee members is standing there in front of the group of their respected peers. I mean, we all respect and love each other. At the end of the day, we love each other, but boy, it can sure get intense in some of our conversations, right? Because we have strong belief systems. So we're standing up there with something like a dictionary and saying, all right, so you want to define what relative humidity is. Let's get a chemistry book and look at the definition and see how they explain what relative humidity is. And so you could have one member with some really compelling evidence like that, a quote from a dictionary. And then the chairman will say, all right, I like a definition that I crafted in my own head last night while I was laying in bed, and I'd like to propose it to the group. And so he proposes it and says, let's take a vote. How many of you like that definition? And they will vote on it, leaving the guy with the dictionary standing at the sidelines going, what the heck, man? You just made up a definition that nobody it's lacking in accuracy, but consensus drove the conclusion and the learning objective. And if you ask me, that is something that is a critical flaw in the process. The person with the evidence should trump the committee's vote.
Yeah.
That's my little platform. And I believe that until that changes, we're going to continue to have ideas that come from unknown sources. And it's difficult to, get behind those kinds of ideas.
Well, I do want to plug because Bill's coming on, but have you read this one, When Worlds Collide?
It looks good, though.
It's pretty interesting because he breaks down similar in that language, but so you have, because the IIC, the S500, S520, those things, there's the prescriptive, right? The must do's, and then there's the shoulds and the recommendations. And one of the things in insurance policy language is the ambiguities, right? And so he talks about how words matter, which is something that's close to your heart. And then, how when you make a change, the collateral damage from that and possibly unintended consequences. So it's pretty interesting. It's all comes into play. And I don't know if that's something that you've addressed, but I know kind of offline we talked about in some ways some of these things have almost been weaponized, whether it's Xactimate or the standards, to where I would like to believe that probably wasn't something that anybody thought would ever happen, but obviously here we are, right, where people can take a WRT class, and then, you know, a claims reviewer can take a WRT class, and then all of a sudden they're a pro and they can, you know, chip away at your estimate, those kinds of things. I was grateful. The organization I was first with, a Service Master, I probably had at least 3 months in before I got my first certifications. And I remember being in class with a lot of people that just got hired, right? And the first thing they do is send them to a class. And I thought it was so much more meaningful to me because I had some experience doing it. And now, so I had the application of it. And then now it was adding, oh, this makes more sense why we do this, or, oh, we should adjust this. It's almost like a kid graduating college and then trying to tell everybody at the organization, you know, well, this is what my professor told me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's in your mind as you encourage people, you know, say for new restorers, right? There's this bridge between guys like yourself that have been involved in a long time, learned by making your share of mistakes, and then, you know, obviously breaking it down to the point where you've put it in writing very carefully. What is your encouragement to young restorers, people starting out that really want to try to do things the right way? What are some of those keys?
Wow. So that's probably the question of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get that question quite often, to be honest with you. So full disclosure here. So I'm 59. I'm about to turn 60 in the summer. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of my career, and I've been doing this now for 43 years, and so it's a full career. And I was thinking about this the other day. I've taken all this knowledge and I did my best to share that in a book
Yeah.
form, as well as teaching and sharing that experience with others. And I enjoy that activity, but I'm thinking that what I get these calls from other restorers saying, "How did you get to where you are, Ken?" Okay, so like as if I'm in some special place.
Sure. Sure.
But they do want to follow or imitate or learn from that path. So here's what I would tell them. Okay, first of all, get some education. If you think that you know everything necessary to do restoration work, you're dangerous. You're
Yeah.
just dangerous. I've been doing it
Yeah.
for 43 years, and every single class I teach or attend, I am learning something new. It
Yeah.
never stops. And so I think that's rule number one. Get as much certification as you can, listen carefully to their message, and then be a healthy skeptic of what you've just been told.
Huh.
Don't just blindly believe it. That some of the stupidest things are being taught by instructors who are, sharing ideas that have no substance or support.
Sure.
So hear it respectfully. Don't necessarily challenge them in a classroom. That never goes over well. You can talk to them afterwards, and say, "Hey, look, I want to see if I can wrap my head around what I thought I heard you say," and then take it that way. And then go back home to the libraries, online, whatever, and research what you think you understood, and try and get a more robust view of the real science, in addition to what the IICRC instructor taught. Now, you don't, forget about that message that you heard from the IICRC instructor, even if it's wrong. What I want you to know is that when you talk to adjusters and competitors, at least you know what they've been taught. And so with your accurate information, you can see where they're coming from. And this is an important understanding in any of your communications, is first seek to understand, right? So it's important that you know what it is that they've been taught. And then the next thing I'd encourage them to do is start writing. Okay, start writing articles for trade journals.
Huh.
That will get you and your name and your message recognized. Competitors and colleagues from around the world will say, "Oh, you're John Isaacson. I saw what you wrote, and I really appreciated this point and that point." And then somebody else overhears that, and they start, "Oh, there's somebody that might be somebody worth getting to know." And that's how the reputation starts to build. Once you've finished, once you're doing these writings, keep a copy of them, right? Assemble them, and that can be a foundation for possibly a book on a passion that you didn't realize that you have. Maybe you're just completely fascinated with the world of contents and you want to start writing about
Yeah.
contents processing, this is of great value to the industry, and it helps you with your career become someone that is an industry leader, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, if you really want to keep going with on that line, you can evolve into a consulting gig. Okay, so that now the insurers and or property owners are calling you out to assist the contractor that they hired in developing a scope that is competent, usual, customary, and will be approved by the insurance adjuster. And then of course from there you can start getting, exploring the world of teaching. And I will say this about teaching, okay, everybody. A lot of people think there's a lot of money in it. It's not a place where you go if you want to make millions, man. There's very few wealthy instructors. I
Yeah.
can name a few of them that are, but they have no life. I mean, they are on the road like all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be an instructor, you be an instructor because of the reward of, for me, the reward is when I see a frown on some student's face. He's trying to wrestle with an idea. He's trying to understand it. It might be something that's completely challenging to him. And then, as I'm explaining this to him, all of a sudden his face softens. He
Yeah.
sits back, his hands go up, and you can almost see that light bulb above their head. I get it now. For me,
Yeah.
that's my paycheck. That's what I do it for. I do it so that they have an understanding, and now the pieces of the puzzle start to fit together. That's my motive. That's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick break, Ken, for our sponsors,
Sure.
and then we'll be right back.
I have a confession to make. When I go to work, all I want to do is to screw. But sometimes the parts that I need to replace are riveted, not screwed. Then I need to worry about aluminum shavings getting into places that are not supposed to have aluminum shavings in. Like for example fan motors, electronics, or my knees, because I kneel all of the time. That's why I use my shop vac when I drill rivets out. It also works great when drilling other materials like wood or drywall. Thank you for having me again, John.
Are you guys wondering what to get your water techs for Christmas? A power box is the perfect gift, but don't take my word for it. Here's a clip from a Christmas party in 2019. What is it?
Open it.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! It's a power box! Yes! Yes! I've always wanted one.
Wait, are you crying?
So if you want your Christmas party to turn out like that one, get your water techs a GMS power box made out of real lightning bolts for 39 easy payments of $9.99.
Now available in your favorite Christmas colors.
So Elon Posmonic, born to repair. He's mobile repairs based out of San Diego, but he also consults via phone or video. Keeping your equipment moving. And then, are you familiar with the GMS distribution boxes?
I have, yes, I've seen them at trade shows. They're
Yeah,
sure fine machine.
We got one when I was managing an office in the Seattle area, and they're game changers. They're much lighter and very, very functional. So,
Good price too.
yes, 39 easy payments of $9.99.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk. We talked a little bit offline about Xactimate. How do you feel about Xactimate, Ken?
Oh my, there's the landmine. So look, the short answer is this: Xactimate is a fine estimating tool. Okay, fine estimating tool. What is wrong with Xactimate today in today's marketplace is its misuse, its abuse. Listen, there's nothing wrong with the product. It's very sophisticated, it's very powerful, but it's the people who have come into a practice of using it in a fashion that it was never intended to be used. So here's a couple of examples. A lot of people believe that the pricing within Xactimate is mandatory, that it is a final maximum amount. Listen, it's an estimating program that you're supposed to put your prices in there, not just believe somebody else's made up numbers. So it's an important understanding as to what the catalog of prices is, what its limitations are, how it's to be used. Is overhead and profit included in the line items, like general contract overhead and profit? No, it's not. What does the end user license agreement say about how that product is to be used and how it's not to be used? And I think a lot of people should refresh their understanding of what the license agreement says about their product, because a lot of the users of that product are using it in a fashion that they have stated by clicking that button. They will not use it in the fashion that Xactimate says. Don't use our product in this way. So for instance, limiting prices. That's a stipulation in the agreement. It's not to be used that way.
Yeah.
So the question is, what can we do to try and encourage everyone to use the software as it was intended to be used?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, I think Ed Cross had that video with Bill Loveland, and, up to that point, there had been some, I know Marty King even had his estimating platform. I'm trying to remember, it was a weird little computer, right? Do you remember what that was called?
Oh my goodness. That was a long time ago, John.
Yeah.
How do you know about that? That was a long time ago. In fact, I think it was back in around 1990. Church. I think that Marty King's software company was Church something. Boy, it's a long time ago. But yeah, no, it was a straightforward software program. It came out around the same time that Xactimate started to emerge. And of course, one player becomes the dominant player when you have all these different people trying to, cut their little piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Xactimate ended up becoming the dominant player.
Now, am I correct? The majority of your work has been on the mitigation side of the industry. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm really big on the rebuild side.
This has been brought up before. Do you know very many other industries where you come in, sign an agreement, do all of the work, and then invoice at the end?
Isn't that the stupidest plan?
Yeah.
And it's putting a lot of companies out of business, because the insurance companies are becoming more and more resistant to paying any bill without it being pushed to the point of a court trial.
And to add to it, to shooting ourselves in the foot, what is the common restore? There's two things, right? They show up, they say, you won't have to pay anything, right? Except for maybe your deductible, wink, wink. Right. And then the other part of it is, not communicating immediately, frequently, and constantly, and getting things in emails, for approvals. I know I had to learn that early on. An adjuster can tell you anything they want over the phone, right? You need to follow that up, get it in email. Even that's not going to be bulletproof. But what have been some of those lessons? Well, and that's the other part, is everybody wants to get into large loss, right? Right. That's where all the money is. Well, it's also where a lot of debt is, right? You got to extend yourself. So do you remember some of those early lessons you had to learn the hard way, as far as navigating both the estimating and billing process and working with insurance companies?
Yeah, and I sure do. And you know, we could take days with
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these horror stories, you know,
Yep.
that we could share back and forth. I will tell you that those types of lessons are the types of lessons that we all learn when we go to our trade conventions and we
Yep.
sit there in over a beer or a cigar or something, and we're sharing these war stories,
Yep.
and and trying to figure out how our colleagues respond and handled
Right.
that experience if they've ever had it, and
Yep.
then we learn from each other from that, right? And so it's a powerful learning experience to sit with others who are struggling with the same challenges you are. Um, as far as what we can do about it or what we've learned, here's what I do know is that this landscape has changed all the
Yeah.
time in the
Yeah.
last 43 years. It's never gotten to a point where, okay, this is predictable, this is what we're going to experience. Because the minute you get to that point, you go, all right, I know what I'm going to do next time. Here comes the adversary, whoever that is, whether it be the adjuster, homeowner, third-party consultant, third-party administrator, whoever it is. They come in on the job site and they throw a stick into your wheels and everything falls apart, right? And so you sit there and go like, how do I navigate that? I've done everything I could to, stay out of trouble, and yet I still find myself in trouble every single time. How do we do this business without being so, I don't know, challenged on a daily basis?
Yeah.
We've got something to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's if you're, I think too, the side of that is if you're, I guess the other extreme, there's a popular undercurrent, other extreme where, well, we're just going to charge the customer for everything. And that just seems to be setting yourself up for legal issues as well, because if the client's put in a position, and a lot of people that claim that say they're doing it on behalf of the client. Well, part of that process would be educating your client on this is how the process goes, and trying to navigate. I think that's where we've talked about. I try to be maybe a little more of a pragmatist, and currently I'm a lot more on the repair side. So I would say I'd much rather have the negotiations up front than on the back end. Those are the ones that hurt, right? You've now anticipated we just sent an invoice for $1 million. Holy cow, and then $300,000 is the final payout, right?
Right.
And you've set everything up based on that. So I'm wondering, what are some of those? You've got the extreme where you just kind of go in blindside. You expect that it's all going to work out. The customer signed the invoice, and we're going to deal with the insurance company. And then on the other side, the extreme of, well, anything the insurance company is not going to pay for, you are. And it seems like neither one of those benefit the client, right? Where, as a restorer, we're supposed to know the process, both of how to dry it, how to properly bill for it, and navigate, communicating scope, right? We don't want to talk price, but we want to justify our scope. Anything that you would say to that for modern restorers?
So your last sentence is the key point. We are the ones that are supposed to know the process, the price, and the procedure, and how to do this.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yet you also said, but I want to get the approval of the adjuster before we execute what I know needs to be done. And that's where the system falls apart, because this adjuster doesn't have the skill set that you, the professional restorer, has. So it's an absurd idea to think I need to have his approval. I surrender to his decision on this. That's where it all falls apart. And it's also one of the reasons why I particularly struggle with preferred vendor program work.
Yeah.
Because you're surrendering the control and your expertise to someone who's might not have ever even gone to a single class, has never been a contractor ever, and doesn't have to warranty the end product. Why do we surrender our expertise to somebody that is so unqualified? And
Well,
so this is where it gets challenging, right?
But if you're a contractor and you've agreed to the preferred vendor, it is then silly to complain that you're in that program.
We're in agreement.
Yeah,
absolutely. If you have read that program and you volunteered to adhere to the rules of the program, listen, there isn't nobody that can help you.
Yeah,
You're going to have to do it.
You're right. Yeah. Well,
you walked into that bed, and good luck. But I'm not going to play in that world.
My buddy and I have this joke, you go to Taco Bell and then you pray for your meal and God says, hey, you're the one that went to the drive-thru, you're on your own.
Exactly. Good luck with that, Taco Bell. Never mind.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time. Talk to me about, you're a big believer in RIA, the Restoration Industry Association. Their latest kind of push has been, I'm sorry, the last conference was supposed to be, I had it on the tip of my tongue.
Its location? I don't know where the location was.
No, the prior one, as far as the theme, was unity, right? I can't remember the terminology.
Yes, fragmented no more.
Fragmented no more.
Right.
Why do you believe, you've been involved, you've seen the different evolutions of groups and whatnot, why do you believe that RIA is one of the most beneficial things that a restorer can be a part of, and that you're still actively involved in RIA, correct?
Right, and so I really appreciate the question. Thanks for asking it, John. So I am quite a loyalist to the RIA. I've been with them for 30 years now. I've hit almost every convention, and I have received so much value from that organization. It's hard to put into words. But I will say this, that the reason, and I will also say, before I tell you about how much I love RIA, I will tell you that I've tried many other trade associations as well. Some that were Canadian, some that were regional associations in California and Washington State, and several other ones. And they do provide value, but wow, going to RIA and sitting with these people that you've read their articles, because they write, many of them do. Many of them have some of the largest organizations in the world, let alone the nation. So there you have the CEO sitting at your dinner table, and we're talking about the industry. Where can you get that? I mean, this is where all the heavyweights are, and that's why I particularly like that organization, because I want to learn from people with some really solid experiences. That's where I go, is where all the these legends, these living legends appear. I know a lot of people say that they think that the RIA is a good old boys club, and I've been hearing that all my life. Oh, the RIA is just a good old boys club. You don't really, it's too hard to get in there. They just all look after themselves. There's a part of me that I'm starting to wrap my arms around and embrace that idea. I like the idea of being in a good old boys club where I'm sitting with the industry's finest and we're sharing notes. That has got value, as opposed to somebody who's been in business for 3 years like I just did. How are we going to learn from each other? Well, I don't know. I had that problem last week. I still don't know what to do with it. I want to talk to the 40-year veteran who's going to guide the process and the thinking about how you navigate that experience. So that's the biggest value, is the networking opportunity. And then, of course, what RIA is doing right now that I'm just thrilled to death about is the AGA, the Advocacy and Governmental Affairs Committee, with Ed Cross as chairman. He is a lawyer, and he's the only lawyer that I know of that has his WRT and ASD. Oh. So he's got his credentials, and he is a bulldog fighting for the restorer. All right. Or the policy holder. He's just really very effective, and they're starting to lobby for change, and they're talking to people like Xactimate. Let's get on the same page with how we're supposed to use this. What do you think we should do, Xactimate, when we got this situation? And so we're getting answers. We're finding solutions, and we're sharing it with our membership. Membership has its benefits, right?
Yep. So as a good old boy, you appreciate the good old boys club, is what you're saying?
Well, so listen, that's a controversial statement, and that's not an official position. But in my head, I like it. I'm not uncomfortable with the idea that I'm hanging with the good old boys, because these are the gurus.
So June in Kissimmee is the next RIA. One thing some of the younger groups have done is maybe a better job of building a sense of community. Whether that's propelling people forward or not always is definitely up for discussion. But for those guys coming into the industry, if they pay their way to Florida, you feel like the open invitation, people should just approach and introduce themselves and see where it goes from there. You think a lot of those living legends that you talked about will be open to, how do we bridge that? Honestly, like, how do we bridge that? We get the young guys and gals in the industry with the people that have the wealth of knowledge.
Right. So this year is a particularly special year. It's
Yeah.
my understanding that this year is the 75th anniversary
Yeah.
of the RIA. And with that in mind, there are VIPs that have
Yeah.
been personally invited to attend this event. People, I know you've had Claude Blackburn on the show.
Yep.
There's an industry guru. I mean, he's the founder of Dri Eaz products. He's one of the first people to really start doing drying, on location drying, because before that, people would take the carpets to their warehouse and dry it in their warehouse.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's very instrumental. And you wouldn't believe some of the stories he's got. Cliff Zlotnick is likely to be there. Pete Consigli will certainly be there. I don't know who else. I've got to think about, all these other
Yeah.
heavyweights. But this is an event where, yeah, they're going to be available to meet, shake hands, and talk to them about their thoughts and their opinions of what's happening in our industry today. There's so much to learn from these guys. And
Yeah.
they're so approachable. They're such nice people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what you and I have talked about. That was maybe way back, I think, on LinkedIn. There's if you are new to the industry and you're posting, hey, this is what I'm learning, I think people will be a lot more kinder, I suppose. But if you're promoting something where you're doing something wrong, it is very funny. People want to post on social media and then have no repercussions, right? So if you put it out there, expect that. And do you believe it is important? I mean, we should police ourselves in that sense, right? If somebody is promoting something obstinately that is wrong, it should be called out, whether that should be private or, I guess, if you post it public, it should be public, right?
So, oh man, this subject is close to my heart because I have a really hard time, not chiming in when I see something that is just reckless, right?
Blatantly,
Okay, and
yeah.
somebody said, "Ken, you need to shut up," okay, because you don't need to do that. And so I said, "Oh man, I know, but it's so wrong." And they say, "Look, you have the right to remain silent. You just don't have the capability, Ken." So, anyways, I am trying to scale back on being such a critic of other people's images and just remain silent. But boy, somebody really needs to, tell these people that those kinds of images gives our entire industry, even the good guys, a black eye. We all lose credibility when one person brags about their substandard workmanship.
Yeah.
And you go like, man, I just wish you would be like, I wish I had a delete button to take it off the internet so that nobody sees this person that's still very young in his learning process. Yeah. And I believe that they truly believe that they're doing a service to the customer, that they're doing, look at this, I'm saving them money, this is great. But in fact, it's it's innocent. And it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, man, Ken, thank you so much for being generous with your time. I hope this is the first of many, because we haven't even scratched the surface. I definitely want to encourage people. Like I said, the IAQ radio, you're on episode 134, 426, and 436 are ones that I listened to recently where there's just really good discussion. And so, and you said you will be at the RIA in June. So.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be a pretty spectacular year because we missed last year, right? So all of the students that went through the RIA advanced credentials, they're going to be pinned at that ceremony. So we have 2 years of all these students going up on the stage, getting formally pinned with their advanced credential.
Oh, neat.
So it's going to be, I just expect something pretty spectacular this year.
Yeah. Any other closing thoughts?
It was a real pleasure to be here, John. I really enjoyed this interview. I look forward to doing it again. I wish you well with your venture. It seems like you're sharing resources like books for your listeners, advice on how they can advance their understanding for restoration work. I wish you the best. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, and a reminder to get the 40% off, reach out to the DYOJO and we'll coordinate that. And I'm looking forward to reading it. I honestly am. So thank you for sending that. And we wish you the best in 2021.
You too, man. You take
All
care.
right. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so there you go. The first live DYOJO podcast. That wasn't so painful, was it? Whew. I have to close the door in my office just for sound, and it gets warm in here, so that's why I'm drinking a lot of water. But we've got a special treat. Michelle Blevins is going to join us. I tried to get... I don't know why this isn't pulling up, but let's pull Michelle in. We're going to talk about the best of... Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. Good afternoon in Michigan, wherever you are. This is awesome, John. Your technology, this platform, like, I love it. It's great.
It's as you can tell, it never was that polished when I was editing it, and it's even less so now. So
no, it's great. I feel like this is the way that information sharing is going now. It's meant to be casual and conversational and just kind of off the cuff and go with it. It doesn't have to be clean and polished all the time.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, I'm just surprised we keep drawing in good guests. I mean, I got Claude on, yourself, Lisa Lavender, Ken came on. I was surprised that we were able to make that happen. So the bar just keeps rising. So.
I'm not surprised at all. I feel like people like you and others that are doing these podcasts, I'm like, okay, you all, I'm competitive in my spirit. And so I see all this stuff and I'm like, okay, I got to keep up, and I'm not keeping up. And that's fine, because you're doing great with what you're doing and everybody does it a little bit different. And so I love it. And you have amazing contacts, and I'm not surprised that you've brought people in. You have a great track record in the industry. So way to go.
Thank you. Well, and you've been much more regularly doing the Ask the Expert, expert, right? Do those release on a certain day? Do you target those, or are they kind of as they come?
It's as they come. I try to do 2 a month, but it's kind of when people are available and are able. And because I work for a bigger media company, I have somebody in-house who does the editing. So it's also a little bit like on that schedule. So, but I shoot for 2 a month. I like to try to get some that coincide with articles. That's another one of my goals for 2021, to make sure that there are more that coincide with articles. We're actually rolling out a new platform for our digital edition in February. That's going to be super. It's a few other publications at BNP have rolled it out already, and we're getting like amazing feedback on it. So it's going to be super user friendly, more scrolling, and just easier to get through the articles. And so we're looking forward to that. We'll see.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's discuss the let's see, we got looking back at 2020, best of Restoration and Remediation magazine. We got the most read articles of 2020, the most popular authors, and the most watched editorial videos. Tell us about, so every year you do this. Actually, that was one of the precursors to writing this book, this book, The Intentional Estimating by John Ikenson. I think 2018, maybe my 10 Commandments of Exactimate was, I think it was in the top 3 or something like that. So
I'm sure it's still popular. I mean, it's still getting clicks. I'm sure I could look through my list and find it. I won't be able to see this quickly, but oh no, I can. It still was the 19th most popular article on our website, even in 2020. So over 2 years later, still getting thousands of page views. So it's one of the.
You called me and you're like, would you like to do a monthly column in Exactivate? And I think my words were, hell no.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But apparently it's a hot topic. So enough about me. Let's talk about 2020. Mm-hmm. I was not as popular in 2020. So
COVID was a little popular in 2020. So looking at all of the stuff that was at the top of everything. So much of it was COVID related. So I think 2021 will look a little bit different, but I was tallying up before I came on, just the top 3 videos of 2020 alone had over 75,000 minutes of views. Just the top 3. And that's on our website alone. That's not including YouTube views. That's not including Facebook views, just on our website alone. So 1,200 hours of views just on the top 3 videos, and they're all coronavirus related.
Yeah.
So that was the theme of the year. So, I see somebody by the name of John Isaacson, again, made the most popular author list, not a surprise at all.
You sure that's not just volume of articles, or that's actual clicks?
It is actual clicks, yes. Yes, although anyway, neither here nor there. I think it's going to be interesting to see in 2021 if some of those articles that, I think had this been a more normal year, those death of 3-day drying articles and the mold remediation roundtable and stuff like that are at the bottom of the top 10, those are the kinds that normally would have been up at the top. So it's really just showing what the trend was. So I find myself kind of wading through this sea now of like, people are a little sick of talking about COVID, but there's still more to learn and still.
Yeah. I honestly, I purposely didn't write about COVID. I think I wrote a Dwight article, like how Dwight Schrute would respond to COVID. Rather than that, I think, it helps and hinders, when you're trying to make it or whatever, but there's some good, the ozone versus coronavirus. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
The death of 3-day drying. And that's, to talk about, Ken Larsen was just on, and that's been a discussion since the beginning of time, right? That's,
yes.
Whether 3-day drying is a myth or not. So any other standouts for you? Things like hidden gems that maybe people should look at from the R&R magazine archives?
Interesting. That's a good question. I have just gotten to know in 2020 Dr. Gene Cole, and he has been doing more writing for us. He's involved with CIRI, I believe. He is a wealth of knowledge. There's a video on here with him, but he's also written some articles, and he's actually going to be involved in a panel discussion that I'm doing with the Experience on February 10th or 11th. It's the Wednesday of that week. And we're doing a lessons from COVID panel, like a live stream panel. And we're also hoping to do the same panel in person at the Experience in April. So I'm bringing in an industrial hygienist and Dr. Cole and some restorers, and talking about the lessons that companies have learned from COVID and what to take into 2021 as we try to move forward from this. So I would say that he's very interesting. I have appreciated Edan Speiser from 911 Restoration and his Fresh Perspective column. That was something brand new in 2020. And he has some great viewpoints on company culture. So I'm trying to think. Those are two that pop out in my head. There's a lot, every issue is filled with 10 articles plus all the web exclusives, and there's new stuff all the time. So there's a lot there.
How has that transition from no longer producing the physical print to purely online? How do you think that transition's gone, and what have you guys learned about publication in the 20s?
It's gone pretty well. A lot of readers seem to get it. They seem to understand why we did this, and they're glad that the magazine is still around. And in some ways, it's allowed me to share more good content than I was before. I mean, I'm actually finding myself now kind of overflowing with good content from, industry thought leaders that I've been planning. I have issues planned out through June at this point. I don't think I've ever had that happen. So I'm so thankful that there are all of these industry experts on every topic that are looking to share information. And, there's more people reaching out and talking about acquisitions and mergers and how that's a big trend in the industry right now. And so I have a company working on doing a Q&A about how their merger went. Plus I have somebody else that I'm about to do a video with who's more on the side of helping with the acquisitions. And so I think that's obviously a big trend. I got off topic on your question. Going back to your original question about how it's going, I think I think it's great. It's really been well received. Our advertisers have received it really well. Darlene, our national sales manager, has done a good job, I think, of R&R is pretty digital heavy as it is compared to other brands at BNP. We've done more e-blasts and videos, and we were thankfully a little ahead of the curve. So I feel like we've just been able to stay the course. We're getting a brand new website within the next couple of months paired with that new digital edition. And so everything, we're really just upping the ante to make it even more user-friendly as we go.
Okay. Nice. New website coming soon. Okay. So you mentioned you're part of the experience. Say that again, coming up.
The Experience Trade Show and Exhibition, I believe they have different names for the spring show and the fall show, but the spring show is a go in Charleston, April 19th, 20th, and 21st. I was just talking to Larry Cooper, the organizer, about it. I just did an Ask the Expert with him right before coming on here, so that's going to be on R&R soon, but talking about the different safety protocols that they have in place, and he's already sold 70% of his booth spaces. He just officially announced that the show was a go around Christmas. And if you look at the floor plan, people miss people, the industry, so this will be the first trade show back. And he's talked about, he's going to have wristbands that maybe you've heard this at other trade shows, like green, yellow, and red wristbands for people to pick their color based on their social distancing preferences. So green, give me a hug. I'm here to see you. Yellow, let's have a little bit of distance, maybe an elbow bump, and red's like 6 feet.
Okay.
So, and he has other innovations from within the industry that he's using to help keep people as safe as possible. And so I'm excited. I think that the industry is excited, and there are some people that won't go and some people that will, and we got to start somewhere. And I think this is a good start.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, and then like Ken talked about, RAAs in June, right? Florida.
Yep.
So.
That's something new with R&R this year. We were presenting the Women in Restoration Award at RAA. Now, we were previously presenting it at the Violand events, and RAA was gracious enough to invite us to start presenting it there. So we'll be presenting. We're behind now, just like with the pinning of all of the certifications, the certified restorers, the contents, all of that. Yeah. So we'll be recognizing the 2020 winner and the 2021 winner there.
Yep.
So
very cool. All right. Well, any closing thoughts for inspiring us into 2021? Thank you for so you wrote the introduction to this book, The Intentional People. It's a real interesting read. Actually, the paperback just got approved, so it's now available paperback and Kindle. Be Intentional Culture. Introduction written by Michelle Blevins. So any other words of inspiration as we head into 2021 from Michelle Blevins?
No, I'm going to tell John Isaacson to keep up the good work because you're kicking butt at what you're doing. And so keep doing great things.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. We'll talk again soon.
Yes. Thanks, John, for having me. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. All right. Okay. Let's see. That's it for today. Now, when you started this podcast, you may have been thinking to yourself, "Oh my gosh, what is this?
Oh. What the hell are we doing here, Harry?"
But if you got through my intro and into the meat of whatever our guest was talking about, then you're like, okay, I get it.
Beneath a man, we find his nucleus.
Somehow, John, the DYOJO podcast is able to attract people more talented and insightful than himself. Exactly. We are the Infotainment Podcast. We are here to help you shorten your dang learning curve for personal and professional development. And this guest who's over here did that. You're welcome. So you may be asking, how can we support the DYOJO podcast? Well, You can like our page on LinkedIn. You can like our page on Facebook. You can like us on Instagram. The DYOJO, THE, that's how you spell the, DYOJO.com. Also, we are on YouTube's and Spotify's and Google Podcast, Apple, iTunes Podcast, Anchor Podcast. So you can listen, like. You can also buy this book. Seriously, buy this book. Help me feed my kids. Okay, if it's not for the content, which mediocre at best, think of the children. Okay.
Please,
Bob,
please,
Bob.
give me. I need. Give me,
Okay,
please.
all right.
Okay, and this Be Intentional Estimating, the DYOJOpodcast.com/book 1, because there is a book 2 coming in early 2021, Be Intentional Culture, which is actually myself and, again, more talented people than myself helping contribute to how small things can either enhance or undermine your efforts to build a strong culture. So check the stuff out, like it, review it, tell your friends, have a listening party, because most places we can't get together, but we could do like a Zoom call. That's the reason we're trying to do the lives. Maybe we can get a little more engagement, interact with us while we're on the podcast. Because anyways, thank you for listening. You all are great. Most of you are great. A small percentage of you are great. The DYOJO podcast. Thank you.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.